feeling much better, just some better. And for those of you that have asked several times, I think I am 100% over my shingles now. I don't even tingle when I get in the shower and it runs over my back. So I think we're good to go. Still a little discoloration, but my understanding is that'll take a while, but nothing bad going on. So thank y'all for your concern and your prayers on that. Need to keep all those that are sick and on the injured and operating list, Lisa and all of those in our prayers. Good to see the Moody's back with us. Keep Brother Terry in your prayers. Anybody else that we need to think about, pray about at this time? Okay. Well, Brother Jeremy, since you were here, would you mind leading us in a word of prayer, please? Amen. As we ended last Sunday's lesson, a question came up, and if memory serves me correctly, it revolved around Ben-Hadad, Hazael, and Elisha about Ben-Hadad being told a lie that he would recover from a disease. And the question was asked about lying, and the bell rang, and I said I was saved by the bell, and Brother Clunch would handle it Wednesday night. Well, Wednesday night, he conveniently forgot to say anything about it until he was saved by the bell. So I think we need to go back and look at that today, first off, and get that complete. Now, if you recall, and this is in 2 Kings chapter, whatever it is, 7 or so, 8, Ben-Hadad had sent Hazael to Elisha to ask him if he would recover from his disease. And what did Elisha tell Hazael specifically? Okay, so if we go back, Brother Clarence just read it there, it's in chapter 8 and verse 10. When Hazael asked Elisha if Ben-Hadad would recover, Elisha told him, "You go tell him he will recover. However, God showed me that he would not." Did Elisha tell Hazael a story? Yes, but he informed the questioner. Hazael asked the question that the king Ben-Hadad sent me to ask you if he will recover. And when Elisha said, "Tell him he will, but God told me he would die, showed me he would die," he has fully informed Hazael of what was going on. Correct? So Elisha didn't tell a story. Now, when we get on down to it, and Hazael goes back to Ben-Hadad, what does he tell Ben-Hadad? You're going to recover. No qualification in there at all. and then the next day he died. Why do you think that Hazael lied to Ben-Hadad? Okay. What else, though? There's a little. I'm playing the devil right now. What else did Elisha tell Hazael? That he would be the king. Now, if we throw that into the mix, and if he goes back and tells Ben-Hadad, fully informs him of what's going on, you're going to die and I'm going to be king, what's going to happen? Odds are Ben-Hadad's going to try to do something, correct? Maybe, maybe not. But there's a lot of things today that always comes up, and I'm not going to answer it. I'm just going to throw it out so you can think about it. How many of us men have had our wives walk out of the bathroom getting ready on a Sunday morning and say, "How do I look?" And they could have something mismatched or something that you don't like, but what do you tell them? Do you tell them the truth? You need to go change. Oh, you look fabulous. What's the intent? What are you going to do? Personally, I'm not going to answer the question of is that a lie or not, but I'm going to say in the case here of Hazael that he was taking the least offensive way out of a situation. Yes, he told him he was going to live when he knew he was going to die. Some of us military folks, have we ever told a righteous lie in the military? Is there any such thing as a righteous lie? Pardon? Okay, what if you're on that in that foxhole and you put your and what if you in that foxhole and you want to see if that enemy's out there and you put your helmet on the end of your weapon and hold it up? Aren't you deceiving the enemy, making him think your head's popping up instead of just a helmet? Isn't that an entrapment? Isn't that a misleading? No. It's war, right? I think we've spent enough time on that, and I've got you all muddled enough now that you can go home and chew on some of this stuff. But we didn't include that part. What did he do the next day? The very next day, after he said, "You're going to recover," what did he do the very next day? Suffocated him to death. Okay. That's correct. And a lot of times when me personally, when I go visit a doctor or the emergency room, all I want is fact. let me digest it the way I want to, but don't tell me I'm going to be fine if you know I'm not. Don't tell me that shot's going to be a little pinch when you know it's going to, especially if it's a rabies shot and it's going to hurt like the devil. Tell it like it is. Let me die. All I want is fact, and I will process it. There are a lot of people, though, that when they are sick, they'll ask for the truth, but they really don't want to know the truth. They want to know that there's hope. My dad, for instance, when my mom was terminal with cancer, we knew absolutely that she was terminal. The physician even gave me a letter. Dad went with me to the physician. He gave me a letter to take to the military. I was an only child, so that they would do a humanitarian reassignment. Dad knew exactly what was in that letter, but he would never accept the fact that she was going to die until she passed. It was always, there's hope. So in this particular case, Haziel, it was an abominable lie, especially since he went and killed the guy, but how he was going to process it, nobody knows. Well, Brother Clarence just asked if it was a play on words because Elisha had said you may, telling me may recover, whereas Haziel said you will surely recover. But when God showed him, do you not think that Elisha knew absolutely he was going to die? He wasn't going to recover? Excellent point. He could have recovered from the disease, but he couldn't recover from Haziel. Okay, time to move on. I'm going to back up to into chapter 8. Well, we're in chapter 8. I'm going to go down to verse 25 and pick up there and read just a couple of verses, and then we'll get down into chapter 9. It says, in the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, got readers and still got to put it up under my nose. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, did Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. Now, we spent quite a bit of time last week discussing the names and the ages and the parents and the lineage there. But the important part is that in the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, now this is Joram of the north, the tribes of Israel, that Ahaziah of the south of Judah began to reign. Now, today's lesson, we're going to be talking about Ahaziah, Joram of the north, and Jehu of the north. And the whole setting is covered in about 1 year, around 841, because it winds up that Jehu kills Joram. also is going to wind up killing Jezebel. And then next week, we'll get into where there's a lot more killing going on. The reason it revolves around 1 year, if you recall, Ahaziah, that takes over as king of the south of Judah, is an evil person, has married daughter of Ahab, and he's going to, or let me back up, his mother is the daughter of Ahab, but he's only going to rule 1 year because he's so evil. So all of this takes place in about 1 year. Now, when we get down to chapter 9, if you look at your question, if you don't have the questions, it's lesson 15, and there's a few copies out on the banister. But the first question starts out with Ahaziah and Joram joined forces and went to war against whom and at what place. Well, we're just going to go through chapter 9, and if you'll follow along with the questions, a lot of the questions will be answered. And there's a couple of things that we want to point to as we go along. Starting with, let's just go back up to chapter 8 and verse 28 and start there. And when he, that's Ahaziah, went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to the war against Hazael, king of Syria, and Ramoth Gilead, and the Syrians wounded Joram. Let's pause right there. When he went up with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Syria, and Ramoth Gilead. Historically, Ramoth Gilead had been captured a while back, and that there had been another attempt about 14 years prior to this where Ahab and Jehoshaphat had tried to do the same thing. And this is back in 1 Kings chapter 22. It's almost the whole chapter of 22 to get the reading. But Ahab of the north, Jehoshaphat of the south, they had joined forces about 14 years previous to this to try to take back Ramoth Gilead. It didn't work then, but now it's going to appear that it works. But the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram went back to be healed to Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him at Ramah, when he fought against Hazael, king of Syria, and Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the king of Ahab in Jezreel, because he was sick. Questions, comments as we end this little part? Now, when we pick up in chapter 9, it says, Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets and said unto him, Gird up thy loins and take this box of oil in thy hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when thou comest thither, look out there Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and make him arise up from among his brethren and carry him to an inner chamber. Then take the box of oil and pour it on his head and say, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then open the door and flee and tarry not. Now, Jehu is going to be king, and when he is told to open the door and flee and not tarry, why would God tell Elisha to go bestow this great honor upon this person and then you leave immediately?
Verse 15 tells him quietly to Jehu, said, "Go, make sure nobody escapes here and goes to Jezreel and tells." You know, he would be concerned then that this would be passed along and that Joram would find out before his race would find out.
Again, back to you military folks. How often in the military do you tell somebody to keep a secret and the secret never is kept? I had a little trick when I was in the military. Every time I would go to a new base or a new assignment, I would call in my leaders one by one. And I'd sit down with them and I'd tell them something, and I may have been lying to them, but I was testing them, as you say, because I would tell each one of them something different in confidence. And then 2 days later, I would know which ones I could trust because I would know I would be hearing things from some that were told in confidence that wasn't kept confident. Have you ever thought about it that way? If you're told something in confidence, what does that mean? Keep it to yourself. A couple of days. If you tell me something and you don't tell anybody else, you know I'm the only one that knows it, and you say this is confidential, and then 2 days later, Jeremy tells you what he had heard, where could it come from? So you know you can't trust me anymore, right? But told him not to tarry. So the young man, even the young man the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead, and when he came, behold, the captain of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, unto which of us? Unto which of all us? And he said, to thee, O captain, meaning Jehu. And he arose and went into the house, and he poured the oil on his head, and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. Who anointed him king at this point? God. Elisha was just the messenger. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. What had Jezebel done? What had Ahab done? We've said it before, but we're going to remind you one more time. Who was Jezebel? She was a Phoenician. Did she worship the god? Baal worship. Ahab married her. What did Ahab then do? Started building temples, high places, and Baal worship. What did Jezebel do to people that got in her way or in Ahab's way? She had them disposed of, killed. So Ahab and Jezebel were not good people. And here they had managed to wind up killing some of the prophets and all. And so that's why the revenge is going to take place. It says, for the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off Ahab and him that is shut up and left in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and take the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah. And then he comes up with a prophecy or a prediction. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel and the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. Seems like their revenge is going to happen, right? Ahab's going to die. Jezebel's going to be fed to the dogs. Verse 11, then Jehu came forth to the servants of his Lord, and one said unto him, is all well? Wherefore come this madman follow thee? And he said unto them, ye know the man and his communication. And they said, it is false. Tell us now. And he said, thus and thus spake he to me, saying, thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. As Brother Jeremy mentioned earlier, this is some of the confusion that takes place. You've got all these captains there. Now remember, Jehu is not in the line. He's not the son of anybody, but he's going to be appointed king out of all these captains. David, in your position in the military, have you ever gone into a meeting with a bunch of peers, and when an assignment was given, you sit back and wondered why that person got it, why somebody else didn't get it? Most of the time. Well, don't you think the same thing would happen here? You got all these captains around, and this guy is going to be chosen and be made king, and all the others left out. So
There seemed like there wasn't that issue. There was obviously a lot of respect for JU. While this, I'm sure, came as a surprise, they were very quick to fall in line. I don't know if it was because of the respect for JU and his abilities, or the respect for JU and his fierceness and quickness to kill you, or what exactly it was. But I mean, the next verse says they hasted and took every man's garment and put it under him on the top. So they basically made a big place for him to stand and look fancy, and said, Jehu is king, just that quick.
well, that's a good way to look at it. I looked at it from a different perspective, though. I looked at it from me personally. Over 7 decades, over 5 decades that I've been voting, I have voted for a lot of people that didn't get elected president. But as soon as they were elected president, even though I didn't vote for them, they had my respect because of their position. Does that mean I agreed with them? No. But does that mean that I am going to pay them all the respect that is due the position? Yes. Would I give my life for them? Ones I voted for, ones I didn't. Absolutely. So to me, at least, once he was made king, that, at least in my opinion, or to me, shifted things from, hey, he's one of us, to, hey, he's in charge. And we can look back in military days when, if you're equal with somebody and they get promoted, don't you honor them in that promotion even though you wish you had had it? Let me make a note of that and ask God when we get to heaven. I don't.
He started not a very good terms for me, because he's not acknowledging God's power that said at first. They're saying, why did this madman come to you? And he's kind of flippant. Oh, you know that madman is bad. I mean, it's just works. But he knows that there's more to it, but he's still not giving God honor on that. And then they say, you're telling us a lie, basically. He says, well, he said this and that. I know how he said it. It seems flippant to me how you say that. The fact that God had that power to make
Like I said, I don't know the answer to it, but
should have made that. And you look at most of the kings from Noah there,
one of the first times we see God anointing somebody to the kingdom as far as the north. It's just been gone through this succession as far as we've got one power that can kill the next one on, whoever takes it.
And the kings of the north didn't come through a lineage of genealogy. They swapped families several times, didn't they?
This would be the third family that God has completely cut off. You know, after they reigned, had somebody in their family reign in the north. What was it? It's Jeroboam. Yeah, Jeroboam, and then Baasha, and now Ahab. And not just, you're not gonna be the king anymore, but your whole family is gone.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have any more baby boys in your family line is gone. And so that shows the seriousness God had when it came to these evil kings and the way they acted.
Yes, ma'am.
But all the way back in verse 19, when Elijah wrote all the time, and God doesn't know if Elijah, and we're going to know Jehu, before Elijah. So I don't know, but that seems to me like it's definitely a long plan.
Well, to me, it's most interesting because, you know, based on some questions that's arisen, God knows everything that has, is, and will happen. Look how many people he put in a position of power that changed either from bad to good or good to bad. We can go back and ask the question, why did he choose Saul? What happened there? David was good, but a disappointment in some ways. Solomon, big disappointment in some ways. So as you wiggle your way through here, there's some questions that we just can't answer. Yes, sir.
Sometimes God didn't put these people in position of power because they were wanting to be. He put them in position of power because they were the instrument of punishment.
That's correct. And here we got one of those, right? Jehu is an instrument of punishment in one respect. Okay, picking up with verse 14. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram had kept Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, because of Hazael, king of Syria. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael, king of Syria. And Jehu said, if it be your minds, then let none go forth nor escape out of the city to go tell it to Jezreel. Just for side information, can't even remember who I'm trying to think of now. Well, never mind. One of the ancient writers of the text of the history of this period of time starts with a J. Josephus. Couldn't remember Josephus. Josephus mentioned that in here that when Joram was injured, that he was shot with an arrow and that he stayed on the battlefield until the battle was over, and then he went back to Jezreel. Does that make any difference? No, that's just a side comment. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there. And Ahaziah, king of Judah, was come down to see Joram. And there stood a watchman on the tower of Jezreel, and he spied the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company. And Joram said, take an horseman and send to meet them, and let him say, is it peace? Meaning, are you coming in peace? We're not going to read the next little section of this, but what it deals with is he sends out riders more than once to ask, are you coming in peace? And what happens to the riders? Do they go back and report? Are they killed? Appears they changed sides, right? Because what happened is Jehu told them, get behind and follow. So they just get out of the way. Dropping down to verse 21, and Joram said, make ready. And his chariot was made ready, and Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, and they went out against Jehu and met him in the portion of Naboth, the Jezreelite. What does that phrase mean? The portion of Naboth, the Jezreelite. Who was Naboth, the Jezreelite? He was the one that Jezebel had killed for what reason? For the vineyard. So Ahab can take the vineyard. And we had discussed that the territory was probably pretty close to the wall of the city. And here it says in the portion, they don't even call it Naboth's vineyard anymore. They just call it the portion of land that belonged to him. They went out to meet him. And it came to pass when Joram saw Jehu that he said, is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, what peace, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many? And Joram turned his hands. What does that mean? Turns his hands. Means he turned his chariot around. Instead of saying, yo, he goes, yo. He changed directions and fled and said to Ahaziah, there is treachery, Ahaziah. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength and smote Jehoram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot. Now, I don't know if you know much about the way they warred back in those days or not, but generally speaking, they had on some type armor that would cover their front and their back. They had rooms for their arms. They had something up their arms. It could have been nothing more than 2 or 3 or 4 layers of heavy leather, but it was something to try to protect them. But here, in my opinion anyway, the reason it said Jehu drew a bow with his full strength was to get maximum penetration. And here, it entered between his shoulder blades through all the whatever armor he had on, through probably 12 inches of body, and then out the armor in the front. So that was a pretty powerful shot, and it went out, and it was definitely a kill shot because it said it went out his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot. Then Jehu said to Bidkar, his captain, take up and cast him in the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. Again, that's we know what that portion is, and that's where he was now going to be put. And then look at this last section here. It says, for remember how that when I and thou, meaning me and you, rode together after Ahab, his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. What does that mean, that when they rode together after Ahab, his father? Who did they just kill? And who was Joram the son of? Ahab. So And Jehu is also of the north. Joram was of the north. Ahab was of the north. So what does it mean that they rode together after Ahab, his father? They were part of the company of Ahab. Remember their positions now. They're captains. They're high-ranking officials. Again, it was customary in those days that when the king or the leader, the general or the king, rode in a chariot, it wasn't a single person chariot. Two stood on the chariot behind the one that was driving the chariot, and they were basically the rear guard of what was taking place on the chariot. So here, it also emphasizes that as this was taking place, that when Jehu shot Joram, he shot between two of the people on the chariot, so he was pretty good aim. So, but this is what that means, that they were on Ahab's side. They were riding with him, and then this burden hit him. And then it says, surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons. This is the first comment back when we first learned of Naboth being killed. It didn't say anything about family, but we had also referenced this verse at that time because if his sons hadn't been killed, who would get the vineyard? When Jezebel had Naboth killed, the vineyard would have gone to his sons if his sons hadn't been disposed of also. So here the family was wiped out. And it says, I will requite thee in this plat, saith the Lord. Now therefore take and cast him in the plat of ground according to the word of the Lord. So all that had been prophesied and put to place, that he was going to die and be put in that land. And then when Ahaziah, the king of Judah, saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house, and Jehu followed after him and said, smite him also in the chariot. And they did so at the going up to Gur, which is by Ibleam, and he fled into Megiddo and died there. So Ahaziah had a very short reign, 1 year reign. And now he's gone too, and next week we'll get into who follows him on. Questions or comments? Jeremy has gone out to ring the bell. Yes, sir.
Just a clarification from the beginning of
Okay.
you made a comment about a righteous life, and I know that was kind of tongue in cheek, but just to make sure it's said out loud, there is no such thing.
You are correct. So when you tell your two young ones about Santa Claus,
Believe me, I've had that thought. This is why we pray things the way we do. It could be my nickname.
could be what?
My nickname. I could be Santa Claus. You are now. I am now.
You are now? No, there's a lot of those Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and we could go, what is the intent?
Intent doesn't change the light of the tree, but I understand what you're aiming at. But just because I have good intentions doesn't mean I can tell a lie.
That is correct. Do you always have to tell the whole truth? Because I was always told that half a truth is a whole lie. Huh? We could probably discuss that portion about another 6 weeks, couldn't we? Thank y'all so much.